Alright, now I want to delete the 3, so that would be
delete. Just to the left and down one.
delete
Yeah.
title 3
Yeah.
and execute. Yes.
Okay.
Look at that, you.
So yeah, that's the first hierarchy. Obviously, you can't do anything unless you've got a title to put it into. There is no desktop as such, so you have to have the title as you would have to have a folder to put it into. So next thing is that as I said, there's the first thing would be probably to look at mixing. Actually, as for setting up a mix, first thing we need to do about talking about mixing is there are several different statuses within mixing, but the two main ones to grasp are absolute and trim. Absolute basically means that the computer is going to read and return the absolute position and level of what the fader is. If the fader's at infinity, it's going to be spinning back infinity. If it's plus 10, it's plus 10. Trim, what it does is it does something which is essentially auto-nulling. So wherever the fader happens to be physically, it says, I'm going to make that 0. And everything from that point to the bottom of the fader travel is minus 10 dBs, and everything from that to the top of the fader travel is plus 10 dBs. So the whole point being that obviously you have all of this travel for essentially 80, 90 dBs of level. But once you've done that first pass, put the fader in the middle, now you can do much more subtle tweaks in trim mode, because this is 10 dB and this is 10 dB.
Right.
So you can be far more
Like
subtle.
fine tuners on a guitar.
Absolutely.
So would you maybe start a mix in
So
absolute
you
and
have
then
to,
go to trim?
because the thing is you can't trim something that isn't there. So you have to, when you first do a first pass on a mix, it will always be an absolute. And as I said, you cannot trim something that doesn't exist. You have to have
Well, trim
absolute
keep
passes.
your, like if you do your moves in absolute
Mhm.
and you like the moves, but it's just a dB too loud altogether, can you go into trim and then just pull it down 1 dB and it'll retain
There
the
are
moves?
various different things you can do for that. With the G4.0 and 4.01, there is actually an offline command for that. I can't remember exactly what it is right now, but there is an offline command where you can just tell the entire mix to drop down 1 dB.
So
The
you
other
could
thing-
do a vocal up or down mix
Yeah.
without having to run through the whole thing.
But so
But
the other thing would
we
be...
can't do that with this though.
Do we have the?
You can, yeah.
Oh,
I
we
just
can.
can't remember what the command is. I have to look that one up.
Okay.
The other thing, of course, is you've got groups here. I mean, the way I normally do what you were saying about vocal up, vocal down, is I would normally have all the vocals on one group fader and all the verb returns associated with that on that one group fader. So now I can just pull that one group fader up or down. Because even with the vocal up or vocal down, you might not necessarily want it to be exactly the same all the way through. You might be just riding it down during the choruses and still keep it up in the verse. There's also something up here called VCA trim. VCA trim is like a 9th group. It's not automated at all. The groups down here are automated. So, but the VCA trim isn't. And the VCA trim, basically any fader that is on group 0, here's another thing to remember. 0 on here is a group. It is this one here. If we do this, where are we? Okay. So if I take a fader here, and I am on group 0, everything's on 0, I can tweak up and down just with that trim. So if I was trying to pull the entire mix or the entire up or the entire mix down without necessarily wanting to mess about with automation, I can just do that, and that'll basically bring every single fader down. The thing I always tell people is you should always leave this on I when you don't want it to be grouped to anything, because now I can pull everybody down except for that one, because I means it's independent of the grouping. It's still automated, still working perfectly.
These guys are on 1, but they're
On 1, but 1 is on 0.
Oh.
Right.
So I'm putting this one up and down with that.
That was a question I had when I was, so if this is your drums,
Yes?
you leave, this doesn't have to correspond with the number of
No,
the.
no.
Okay,
This is its own grouping.
that's its own.
'Cause this
Yeah.
is already one.
So I mean the thing is that I could make this one,
So the tendency would be to make that I then.
yes. But I mean, what you could do is, like, for instance, if you had the kit, the percussion, and the drum machine set up on those 3, then you could group all those 3 to group 4. So now you can bring down all the kit, or you can bring down all the percussion, or drums and bass and so on. And now you could actually have a single for the rhythm section, but you've got individual control of those groups as well. So I mean, yeah,
And this
right.
is just governing the voltages for the VCAs. This isn't
Absolutely.
like a signal flow.
No, it's not single phase. It's just well, I'm not, it's so. And right now, okay, so we've got this. I'm moving 1 up and down, and it's moving up and all those guys up and down. And if I move, because this is grouped to 2, if I move 2 down, it moves these ones directly because they're grouped to 2, but it moves all these up and down because it's on number 1. I grouped to 2.
Got it.
So there's a couple of different ways to do what you were talking about there.
So when you start the mix, let's just say let's start this cage, which is here,
Yeah.
in absolute. How would we do that?
Normally that is the default status when you're actually
Okay.
starting a new mix. So if we do set up, mix, execute,
Set up, mix, execute.
yeah,
Okay.
and you'll see at the top of the screen it says new mix. You may adjust status now or press execute to continue. Now if you look down at the faders, you'll notice that every single fader is in absolute. The red LED is on. So that's what its default status is on a new mix.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Now, you can, say for instance you just want to work on the drums, you don't want to worry about anything else. You can take things out by pressing the switches, take them out, and now those will not be written into the automation. There's no real reason to do that because you can always write over it afterwards anyway. And obviously if you want to put it back in, you just press the button the second time. The other thing you can do is the FSM, Fader Status Master. When you look at any SSL documentation, it's referred to as FSM key, Fader Status Master. So what you can do there is you can toggle the entire console. So for instance, if we want
What did
to,
that just do?
Is that arm the whole console?
well, right at the moment we've got all the channels that are in,
Oh, I
all the
see.
channels are in absolute, and if you wanted to take a couple out, you just press the individual buttons. But let's say you only wanted 3 channels in, it would be easier to turn them all
Right.
off and then just turn the 3 channels on.
Sure.
Alright.
Okay, so at this
So we're
point,
just gonna execute because we're just gonna go in absolute.
Yeah.
Okay.
and
Yeehaw!
essentially we're playing,
These are your 8 masters.
those are the 8 groups,
Is
and this
this-
is the master over
This is the
here.
Master over there.
What's it?
and then-
What's running on the sync if Pro Tools isn't running?
The SSL is setting
Oh,
the
you
information
We
out.
hit
there.
stop.
I didn't hit play, I pressed execute and it automatically hit play.
But isn't it following Pro Tools?
No,
The other way
Pro
around.
Tools follows the
Oh,
SSL.
so that's what you were saying earlier. That would be
This is the way you want it to be.
interesting.
Alright.
So, I mean, if we're going to do some, just some crazy moves like this, just so we see some stuff moving. Obviously, we can also do a few cuts.
So now if we rewind that, that'll be written.
Yeah, you can rewind that, and you'll see the faders moving in reverse. Press play again, and.
So when we're mixing, I mean, do we literally have to be hitting play and stop and such from
Right here.
Yes, so yes.
Really? No,
Yes.
no more.
No.
Oh, good.
Danger,
I
danger,
hate
Will
this.
Robinson.
Good. All right. That's cool.
Alright.
So you saw that sort of waggle around. Now the thing is that when I rewind, you notice they drop out of absolute, and when I press play, how's it set up? It is not.
That middle bar that says ATPVIP, that's absolute.
Those are auto takeover, immediate pickup. And I can't remember
That's
the others.
how fast the.
No. That's another. We'll get into those in a
Okay.
minute. Anyway, let's say we've gone through and we're happy. We then we press end, and it'll say name of mix. It prompts you with name of mix ? And so once again, you can just press the execute key, and it'll give you a default 1 star. Even if you delete 1 star or change the name of 1 star, the next default it will give will be 2 star.
Ah.
So it's like even if you've gone and done 10 mixes with defaults and you have deleted all of them, and you then do another default, it'll come up with 11 star. So it'll keep track of how many mixes you've done that way. Anyway,
What was the command? Was it end mix
What
or
was
just
that?
end?
I just said end. You just press end.
So that's saving.
End just basically saves the
What will we
mix.
name this?
Well, you can name it whatever you
Leave it
want,
as a
but at the
song.
moment you just press execute,
Let's just.
and it'll just say, it'll just give a number, 1 star.
Oh, under
And
the
the
title
title
of
is
page.
And the title of cage, this is mix 1
So
star.
now give me 1 second. Set up, mix, execute. So now I would go set up, mix, execute.
That would set up a new mix again, and it would just do it from where we are right now. So
Right.
it's going to start at 54
Do
seconds.
you want to adjust the status? No, just like execute.
Yeah.
We,
And
we
it's going
would,
to start running, and then we're going to do the dealio. Then we hit stop.
Well, stop wouldn't do anything. I mean, it just stops it. You press
Execute.
end.
And
name of mix.
just
Yeah,
execute.
Yeah. And you'll see that the new mix started at 54,
Now-
goes to 101.
So now how do I play that mix?
Well, whichever mix you want to go to, you'd say go to mix.
Go to
Mix,
mix.
execute.
Would it not just play the one that's already cursored?
It's going to play the one that we just did because
Right.
that's the one that's got the cursor next to it. If you wanted to go to the other one, you could say go to mix 1. Or
So he didn't have to really say go to 2 because it was already on 2.
No, it was already on 2, yeah.
Yeah, and there's my little moves.
Okay.
Sweet.
But
Okay,
you notice
all right.
the other thing
And now do I
is-
hit end or stop?
If you want, it depends where you want to
Just
get
stop
this.
it.
Stop it, you press stop, you can hit cancel.
What did that do?
That just
Deleted
dumped it out of it. Yeah, anything you might have changed at that point is now gone.
So did you get rid of the second
No,
mix?
they're still there. If you go to this mix, they're still there.
Okay.
We just haven't kept any updates.
Oh,
to
you
it.
haven't kept any. There's no moves.
So the moment you press end, they were in there. If you had made any moves or hit any cuts at that point, those would have been lost. But once you press end, it's there.
So how would I go up? Does the arrow not go up to
no,
1?
no. You'd have to do go to mix 1.
That would be too easy.
That would be
Yeah.
way.
Go
But
to.
but the typical workflow is going to be to have one mix for the entire song, right?
Yeah, but you keep updating that mix over and over again. So
I mean,
you, sort of-
execute.
you start off with
Okay.
You start off with
Now-
that mix 1.
Go to.
Oh, no.
I'm saying you wouldn't have a separate mix for another section or
I
something.
wanted to play.
Yeah,
that
he's
one.
just saying
No,
for like
yeah, it's
vocal.
fine. So
Execute.
He's just saying for like vocal
Go to
up,
mix.
vocal down.
No, you already did
No,
go
but
to
not-
mix
not a
1.
small
No,
time
And so it
frame.
says you now
Not a
may
smaller
adjust
time
status.
Oh,
frame.
so
or
it
whatever.
execute.
Yeah.
So now it's
Now-
gonna play.
Here's the
But
thing
that way
though.
you can recall.
Because we're updating
So
that
you
mix,
can
we are now in
previous.
trim mode.
Mhm.
You see on these on all these channels, we are actually in trim. We're in trim now. All
So all
the
you have to
faders
do
are
is
trim.
just-
Once you
hit
go to
VCA
set.
I mean, right now that was just so I can see the
Yeah.
faders, so I can see the
So
beats and
once
stuff
you
here.
once you open it up a second time, it automatically defaults to trim.
Yes,
So then you would have to set it back to absolute.
if you wanted to write absolute, or if you wanted to actually completely erase.
So let me
Change.
cancel. Let me
So the
Just
second
this
go
mix.
to mix.
Yeah, you can go to mix.
Execute. Oh, list mix, right.
The list mix will just give you the lists, but if you do that, you can say execute now and it'll just go into that mix. And if you want to mess about, you can just press stop, and now you can sort of fiddle around and change statuses and so on.
Cancel.
List
List mix. So now we're on one,
Mm-hmm.
and what, now if I wanna play this mix, but I wanna change it back to absolute,
Well, go to mix execute.
just hit mix,
Go
execute,
to mix.
go to,
Mix,
mix,
execute.
execute.
And it'll say you can adjust status. It'll come up, and all the channels are in green.
You may adjust status.
So now
Oh,
you-
and that's where I would go here.
You can do that if you want to do the whole lot,
Oh, okay.
or you can do it on an individual
Wait,
channel
how did you
basis.
get from trim back to?
The fader.
Fader status master. That flips the entire
Oh, that
console.
just toggles between?
Yeah, you can do like one channel at a time, but once
Oh,
again,
okay.
it's like
Absolute's like your
if
first
it was
mixing, and then trim is
That's
when
cool.
final
if you
tweaks.
want, you know, if you want to just change a few, you just change a few. But if you want, if it's
So
a
you could have
majority-
some in trim and some in
Yes.
absolute.
So like, your 1-2, that'd be like saving session as.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and you could name it vocal up, guitar
Okay,
up,
okay.
you know, kick down, whatever.
Okay.
I mean, the way most people are doing is that you're basically on that first mix, you're doing a very basic first part.
Yeah.
So you go faders roughly at the right levels. Then you go back into that mix and update it, and then you save that update. And of course, you know, at any time while you're going through, you don't have undos, so you have to save each thing that you do. And once you've saved it, then you can obviously, if you don't like it, you can go back to the last one.